Hi, my name's Colin Tebb. I'm chairman of the Essex Historic Military Vehicle Association. As part of the 2020 Heritage events, we've been invited to take you behind the scenes. You might wonder what happens to old military vehicles once they've retired from their service life. Well, a lot of them end up here in Essex. We'd like to show you our storage facility and what we do, how we restore, how we preserve the vehicles, and give you a flavour of what we're about. If you look at our website, you'll see we say we preserve anything from push bikes to tanks. So here's the push bike element. Here is a Rudge. It's late 1930s in unrestored condition. We have a restored World War II push bike that were made by numerous manufacturers during the war. A nice example of what they look like, and they're surprisingly heavy as well.
This is a 1940 dated Wanderer push bike. Wanderer are one of the companies that eventually became Aldi. The bike follows the specification laid down by the Wehrmacht for a heavy duty frame, heavy duty wheels and hubs. It also carries this box on here where you could carry either grenades or other tools. As you can see, it's got a load carrier on the back to carry whatever equipment they decided they needed to carry. And it has, luckily for me I suppose, it's got its original wartime tyres, which are Austrian made, so it's a bit of a mix and match when it was manufactured actually.
It's an exceedingly heavy bike as well.
Yeah, it's very heavy, probably 1.5 times the weight of the British bike. The other interesting feature is you can detach the handlebars as a security feature. And it's got a small device here which you can tighten up to lock the steering in a straight ahead position, and this was useful for when they were transporting bikes without a rider. You often see shots of them riding along with one of them with their hand on the saddle guiding the bike whilst riding their own.
Something you've also got of interest is the can on the back, which predates the jerry can, I believe.
Yeah, this was the standard can that the German army used, the triangular can, designed originally to fit on the running boards of early cars.
Okay, so thank you very much for bringing this down today. I believe this is a new acquisition of yours.
Yes, it is, and I've been looking a very long time, about 6 years, for a Norton.
It is a Norton, is it?
Yes, it is Norton, 1940, 16H, 500 side valve.
Where did you get it from?
I've been looking on eBay, and he appeared on a Monday morning, and I called my husband in the morning and said, there's a Norton for sale, bring it up straight away, because we've been let down on a few, and that was it. Mark rang up that day and we had him on the Tuesday.
Did you have to do much work?
Mark had to put a brake light on the back because obviously they didn't have brake lights in the war, just a few little touch-ups. He needed his engine being cleaned up a little bit. The carbs were blocked, so to ultrasound the carbs, and he runs perfectly.
You called him he. I take it he has a name.
Yes, his name's Albert, because he's
Albert.
like old-fashioned names. Yeah, I'll call him Albert.
Albert the Norton.
Albert the Norton. So Mark says to me, "What do you want to go out today?" Albert.
Okay.
So out he comes, bless him.
I see Albert has Canadian markings on the side of it.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
The Canadians used to use them in the war to escort all the trucks, because they used to take all the signs down in the war, so the Canadians used to guide all the trucks through and take them through, so the Germans didn't know where they were going.
Convoy escort,
That's correct.
General duties and dispatch riding and things
That's
like
it.
that with general use, I think.
Yes, that's it, and that's what I like. I try and dress up like a lady dispatch rider, and I just love riding it. I think it just gives
That's
me
a
a
good
good
point.
buzz.
There were lady dispatch riders during the war, weren't there?
Yes, there was.
So it's nice to see that represented.
That is, and I met a lady dispatch rider many years ago, and she gave me inspiration. She was 100 years of age on this particular day, and I've got an M20 BSA at home, and she asked people who it belonged to. Obviously it belonged to me. And she said, I'd like to talk to that lady. I'm 100 years today. So I walked in and she said, in the war, I was a lady dispatch rider.
Wow.
And I was just totally gobsmacked. And she was absolutely beautiful for 100 years of age. She was very sprightly. And she said, I don't know if I should be saying this on camera, but it really tickled me and everybody she said it to. She said, I used to be dispatching in the war. I didn't know if I'd be alive by the time I get to the end of the day. So she said, if I was ever offered a little bit of rumpy pumpy, she said, I took it up. She said, but by the time I took all my clothes off, she said, which was a lot of dispatch riding clothes, they lost interest. And I thought, that has stuck with me for years and years. But I just think it's so brave, riding the bike with all the bombs and everything going off. Total respect.
How true, yeah. And along with the Norton, we brought down this one. Now, I'm not a particular bike expert, but I do recognise a Harley-Davidson. I believe this is yours.
Absolutely, Cole. Yeah, Harley-Davidson WLA 1942, although I do believe they were all stamped 1942 to confuse the enemy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, apparently so. A little bit different from the WLC, which was supplied to the Canadian forces. A few differences. The Canadians specified a hand override clutch, as well as the foot clutch. And on the WLC, the wheels are interchangeable, whereas on the WLA, they're not interchangeable. But that's basically the only difference. It's more or less the same machine, same engine frame, etc., etc.
So if you ordered a spare wheel, you had to identify whether you had a back one or a front one?
On the WLC, they were actually interchangeable. All you did was change the brake drum over if you wanted the front wheel in the back, and vice versa.
Oh, okay.
But not on the A.
Okay, I didn't realise that.
No, on the A, the drums are actually built into the wheel, which, for what reason, I don't know why they were different, but...
Because this is the bike you see in the films, isn't it? It's whenever you see pictures of wartime American dispatch riders.
Exactly.
So it was the same uses as the Norton, really.
Exactly, yeah.
But this is the one, the iconic bike, really, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. The iconic American bike, anyway.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And this one's got all the police equipment on it. I'd like to think...
Including the baseball bat.
Including the baseball bat, yeah, and the glove, of course, and the ball.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's got the lights and everything. I'll keep those covered just in case, in case they come on. But I think it's more or less as it should be, really.
I've got to ask, what's this bit here?
That's the siren.
That's the siren.
The police
siren. I know the noise well. Yes.
Which is operated by that.
Okay.
When obviously when you're moving, you can only use it when you're on the move.
It's quite a penetrating sound, isn't it? The siren.
It's ear splitting.
Yes.
Yeah, it is really loud. You couldn't fail to hear that coming up behind you. No way.
Yeah. Another thing, post-war with these, and a lot were destroyed and cut up, etc. But a lot survived, and they were often stripped off, weren't they, and turned into what would have been the hot rods in the 60s.
They called them bobbles, and I've actually got one at home.
Oh yes,
you might have seen it.
Yes.
Yeah, that nobody needed one with its military equipment.
Yes,
I mean, it weighs, sort of over 600 pounds as it is.
Yeah. If this fell over, you wouldn't pick it up on your own.
I think you'd have a job, and once you get all that military stuff off, it makes them a nice, light, and possibly faster bike.
Yeah.
I mean, there's armour plate underneath it. There's the rack, which probably weighs 20-30 pounds, and etc. etc. So there's a lot of stuff on here that people took off.
So stripped off, they were sort of the easy rider type bike, weren't they?
A lot of people did make those sort of bikes out of them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. Thanks very much indeed.
Oh, you're welcome.
Not all of our vehicles in here have been fully restored. Behind me we have a Hillman. It's a staff car. During the war, a lot of civilian vehicles were impressed into military service, and this is typical of the sort of thing we found. This one's probably about a 1970s or 80s restoration, and then has been left a little while, or a number of years, and it's now waiting to be refurbed and restored again. On to now, this is probably the oldest vehicle in the barn. It's a pre-war vehicle. It's a Morris, and it's a Morris C8. Used really very early wartime into the Dunkirk era. In fact, most of these that were around saw more service in the German army after being captured in Dunkirk than they did in the British army. This particular vehicle is in an unrestored condition. It's been cleaned up for some film work, so it looks good, and it's a unrestored, and it's the only known unrestored example around in the UK at the moment, unless of course you've got one in your shed somewhere. Not all the vehicles that we have are green. This one you can see is in snow camouflage. It's a British Army lightweight Land Rover, and it was in fact used in Norway. It has a hill heater in it, lots of other kit, and it often goes out on displays complete with all its Arctic weather kit, and it's a fascinating display to see. Next to the air portable Land Rover, we have this one. This is a Series 2 Land Rover, 1958 manufacture. At the time they were replacement for the Jeeps, and they were used really as the mainstay general service lightweight vehicle for the British Army, and many of them are still in service now. We mentioned earlier when we looked at the Norwegian marked air portable Land Rover that we'd talk about them later on. Well, this is one marked up for European use. It's called an air portable Land Rover, or lightweight Land Rover. They were designed for use in the 60s, manufactured through into the 80s. The idea was at that time in the 60s there wasn't a helicopter that could actually lift a Land Rover. So they produced a lightweight Land Rover to make it air portable. Although later on, as the helicopters became more powerful, they could actually lift the full-size Land Rover. Very popular with off-roaders in their post-war guise. They're getting increasingly hard to find in terms of military use and restores. They're a very popular vehicle and quite sought after. Another wartime vehicle we have here. It's comparatively unusual in preservation standards. It was made by Dagenham's finest. It's a Ford. They were made under the brand Fordson during the war. This is a Ford Watt 2. It has a V8 engine, and it has that distinctive V8 engine burble on it. It sounds quite amazing. And unusually for British Army vehicles during the wartime period, it actually had a good engine that was very powerful. British engines tended to be underpowered during the war. Wartime manufacture, that is. This one's a GS truck. It's in the markings of Royal Naval Beachmasters, sort of truck that would have been on the beach during D-Day. This is another example of a Fordson we have in the barn. This is another Fordson Watt 2. This one's quite a rare one in that it has the back body on it rather than the GS canvas topped body. This kind of body was used actually to house an early form of radar, and you can see the antenna parts held on the roof. Also, this one was used, there are examples used as ambulances, and in fact also the BBC used to use a variant of them as well with hard body. As far as we know, there are only two hard-bodied back ones in existence. Well, one vehicle we have to include in this, and it wouldn't be complete without it, is the World War II Jeep. David here has brought his along, and he'll tell us about it. I know this is a recent restoration, or recent completed restoration, as in a matter of weeks, as I understand it.
Yes, it's only done 200 miles since I put it on the road.
So it's fresh out the restoration shop.
Still a bit creaky, yes.
Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about it, please?
Well, I bought it 7 years ago, and with the aim of, with my son and my son-in-law, of having a project we could do one night a week. That was 7 years ago, and we took it completely to pieces. There was nothing you could have taken off the chassis. The engine and gearbox went away to be professionally refurbished in Kent, and we finished putting it together about a month ago.
Okay. I know for Jeeps they were made, you mentioned earlier this was made in Texas.
Yes, I was told it was made in Texas by someone who apparently is an expert, and he said it was to do with the marking on the registration plates, that the different factories, full different factories, would mark them differently. This one in the section says 4x4, which is four-wheel drive, and it's marked like that, and I'm told that came out of the Texas factory.
Okay, I know there's an extensive body of knowledge on Jeeps around, and lots of people know lots of stuff about Jeeps.
I don't.
Yeah. I know there's two different manufacturers, there's Ford and Willis. This one is a Ford?
This is a Ford. They made 278,000 of these during the war period, under licence from Willys, that they weren't allowed to build any more after the war because they were only allowed to build them for government contract.
Okay.
So Willys, most of the built after the war, they will be Willys, not Fords.
Oh, okay. So how can you tell the difference between a Ford and a Willis?
It's fairly easy, really. If you look through the front grille, it's the shape of the front section of the chassis.
Oh, okay.
The Willys is a tubular structure, and this is a goalpost-shaped structure. So it's very easy just by going to the front of the vehicle, and then you know.
Because all parts are interchangeable, aren't they? Or bulk of them are.
Mostly, but those were riveted on. Virtually every part, the two manufacturers made the same.
Yeah. I've done a number of vehicle dating activities for the WLA on Jeeps, and I've seen all manner of variations thereof. There was the Willis, there was the Ford, and there was a version at one time, I believe, where Ford actually supplied chassis to Willis. So you see Willis bodies with Ford chassis on. So I know there's different combinations. And then after the war, Hotchkiss, the French company Hotchkiss, started building them, and they also manufactured quite a lot, up into the 80s, I believe. So there's, and again, unless you know what you're looking at, you don't know really what you've got. So if you like, technically there is such a thing as fake Jeeps around, which is something to be aware of. And if we get new members in the club that are looking at Jeeps, we do recommend they come and talk to us and talk to people that know what they're looking at. And you obviously now fall into that category. You've been through the pain.
You haven't looked at it in that respect,
no, I haven't.
but I've found the manufacturer's number on the chassis, which is where it should be. The business of interchangeability of parts, the air filter has got wing nuts to secure it, and I've got two wing nuts. One is a Ford wing nut and one is a Willys wing nut, and you can tell that by the different manufacturing.
Oh, okay.
Type. The Ford one apparently was a pressed steel, and the Willys is a cast.
Yeah, a lot of Ford ones have an F stamp somewhere on the components.
We've got F stamps on the tops of the wings. Certainly
yes,
one on that
have.
side is visible. That one. I was told by Jeep Parts that was a genuine old Ford wing when I took it into them to show them.
Okay. So there's a lot of history here.
Yeah, I've dressed it up actually in the style and with the same number as the one my father's brother drove during the war.
Oh, really?
And I've taken the number from an old photograph of him with his Jeep just before they went across the Rhine in 1944.
So you've modelled it on an actual Jeep?
I've modelled it on the Jeep as regards to number, little odd bits and pieces. My uncle's
that's the mountain division.
Sign, yeah, the 52nd Lowland, because Uncle didn't want to wear a kilt.
Okay, hence the reason the blue shield with the white cross, same as the badge on the outfit.
And it's Royal Army Service Corps.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really proud of it.
You should be. You've made an excellent job of it. It really does look the part on it.
But I've looked up this morning. The number apparently relates to a series of 1,500 vehicles that were passed from the American services across to the British Army during the war. So my guess is they were probably imported in a ship after D-Day as replacement vehicles.
Yeah, because they did get through quite a lot of them. Yeah. We're going on to something a bit bigger now. Behind me we have two AEC Matadors. Peter here knows a lot more about Matadors than I do, so I'll let Peter take you through those.
The vehicle on my right is a 1942 AEC Matador and is in the form of a medium artillery tractor. This would have towed either the 5.5 medium gun or a 3.7 heavy anti-aircraft gun. It's painted in the camouflage of the D-Day invasions, which is called Mickey Mouse because of the shapes which look a bit like the ears of Mickey Mouse. Of note on here are the 2-gallon water cans. These were the standard cans before the German jerry can was adopted by the British, and they were the ones who called it the jerry can. Also of note is the plate below the driver's windscreen. This was for the detection of gas and was painted with a special paint which would change colour to alert the driver to put his gas mask on. It's fitted with the standard War Department blackout headlight, which, as you can imagine, were pretty poor for driving. And it's also fitted with the standard War Department tow hook at the front.
So it could tow from the front or the back?
It could tow from the front or the back, but also this made it a lot easier to put the gun into position. If you had a 3.7 heavy anti-aircraft gun, which you needed to place, weighing 9.5 tonnes, although you had a crew of 10 in the Matador, it was a lot easier to let the tractor do the work and push the gun into position.
So the crew sat in here?
The crew compartment was in the back, where there are 2 rows of seats to take the crew. The remainder of the back of the tractor would have been loaded with ammunition, generally up to the height of the sides. It's powered by an AEC diesel engine, which is the same engine used in a pre-war London bus.
Yeah, because they have a very distinctive sound, don't they?
Yeah.
They're very much the classic London bus sound.
And unusually, as well, it's got full air brakes, which again is quite a revolution for the time.
Does it have a winch on it?
It's also got a 8.5 tonne winch, which can either be paid out of the rear of the vehicle if you need to drag a gun out of its emplacement, or you can run it up to the sides through here, and you can use it for self-recovery. So if you got stuck, you could pull it out. Although, having said that, in 4-wheel drive, low ratio, they're a very, very capable vehicle off-road. In fact, they'll probably go anywhere you want to go.
And in post-war use, they were used for loggers and things like that, heavy breakdown.
Post-war, they found a lot of employment in the logging industry. They went all over the world, Canada. Recovery vehicles, a lot of them were converted into breakdown vehicles for recovery, and had a hard life, and that's one of the reasons that a lot of them have not survived, really. I mean, this particular vehicle was still being used by the British Army up to 1965.
Really?
So, a long life in service.
It's a lovely restoration. One of the more unusual vehicles we have up here, and certainly one of the most rare, is this one here. As you can see, it's in pre-restoration condition, and it's fair to say it's going to need a lot of work. It's made more difficult because it's actually a German World War II vehicle. It's a Stoewer. They made them in limited numbers during the war. They were a variation, if you like, the equivalent of the Allied Army's Jeep. The Germans had the Kubelwagen, which was probably the nearest parallel to a Jeep, but they had lots of others as well, and one of them was this one, which was a 4-wheel drive vehicle, carried I think 6 people, and was used as a general workhorse through Europe into Russia. This one was picked up, I believe, in Poland, and it's here, and it's awaiting its restoration. The vehicle we have here is one of 2 we have in the barn. They're both Bedford OYs. They were a standard British Army 3-tonne truck, although there were other manufacturers of 3-tonne trucks during wartime as well. They came in service just pre-war, were used throughout the war, and again right into the 60s, and some examples probably into the 70s. 3-tonne, used for everything, fairly uncomfortable, quite narrow to drive in. They were used also post-war as well by haulage companies as they came out of war surplus. Fairly rare, as is most British vehicles in reality. One thing with British vehicles on the Bedfords in general, they all use the same engine, and the smaller version, the 1500 weight one, had the same engine as the 3-tonners. One of the other Bedfords, the main four-wheel drive Bedford, was the Bedford QL. It was manufactured with 7 different bodies. This particular one is a Bedford QLB. It's a Bofors gun tractor, Bofors being the 40mm light anti-aircraft gun. Onwards now to the Bedford QLB. The Bedford QL was the standard name for the Bedford 4x4 3-ton truck. 4x4s were quite rare in the early part of the war, and it was a relatively new technology. The Bofors, or Bofors gun tractor, was towing a Bofors 40mm anti-aircraft gun with a crew cab you can see here, which had 5 people in it. And at the back of the bins, the lower bins carried ammunition, the top bins were carrying crew kit and equipment and things. Basically it was a mobile kit bag. Total crew of 7, but they had additional seats to bring it up to 9 if required. It has the gas detector plate on, standard position, which is typical of the 3-ton trucks during the war, as it was the only way that if there was a gas attack you could actually see it. Being flat fronted, they couldn't see that. As I mentioned earlier, same engine as the Bedford OY. They're not especially quick. 30 miles an hour with a good wind is pretty good out of them, really. But there again, the brakes are sufficiently interesting that you wouldn't really want to go a lot faster. To give an example, fuel consumption on these is around 6 miles a gallon. With the Bofors, it goes down to about 3 if you're towing stuff. Another variant of the Bedford QL is this one. This is a QLT, or Troop Carrier. It was often known as a TCV, a Trooper or a Drooper. It got the name Drooper because of an extension on the back of the chassis. This one's 6 feet longer than the normal QL, and as such, when troops were in the back of it, if it was low loaded, or troops for some reason went to the back of it, it would actually lift the wheels off the ground. And over time they developed a slight sag, and if you actually look side onto these, you can see they actually do look as if they're dropping down on the back. Again, gas detection plate. Both of the QLs are in D-Day markings. This is the vehicle registration number in military terms. This one is right for the contract of this manufacturer. It's a 1942 vehicle. We have the Mickey Mouse camouflage scheme on this one again. Have the Allied star on. A lot of queries on the star. The star was used during the war on all Allied vehicles, not just Americans. In fact, you could often tell Canadian vehicles because they didn't like using the star, so they often put it on upside down or sideways or crooked in some way. Currently on the QLT, we're going through a bit of body work and repair and rework. We found some rotten floorboards in there, so we replaced them. In doing the replacement of the floorboards, we had some problems with the doors and have had to replace some panels in it, and we're working on it. It's a typical example of what would be a small, easy job turning into a big, difficult job. And there's a lot more we've got to do now to work it on and blend it in. It's probably going to need a repaint as well. But we have learned a lot about the vehicle. We've learned about different manufacturers. As a matter of general interest, although it's a Bedford truck, the body is actually made by Austin, and we have the manuals and the documentation to show that. They came out of Bedford's, went to Marshall's in Cambridge for conversion, where they added on the chassis extensions. Then they went to Austin, who then put the Austin body on it. Hope you enjoyed our walk around today. I'd like to thank you very much for watching. If you want to know more about us, please look at our website. That's essexhmva.co.uk, and you'll find more information about us and various articles and things we're sure you'll find of interest.